that they could turn on him. Politico reports leading abortion opponents are threatening to redirect or withhold some of the tens of millions of dollars that they've pledged for the midterms and withdraw their volunteer armies. The frustration, even anger, was sparked by President Trump waffling on an issue that's key to the movement, the Hyde Amendment, which bans federal dollars for most abortions.
You have to be a little flexible on Hyde. You know that. You got to be a little flexible. You got to work something. You got to use ingenuity. You got to work.
It's incredibly damaging to have the President of the United States, the head of the Republican Party, say that we should be flexible on whether our tax dollars pay for the death of other human beings. There's no flexibility on that.
Now, the head of Students for Life warns on social media pro-life voters are not automatic votes for the GOP. If you fund abortion and undermine Hyde protections, you are ignoring your strongest audience of consistent voters you have and will 100% pay for it in elections. Joining us now, Sarah Matthews, spokesperson for Home of the Brave and former Trump White House Deputy Press Secretary. Here with me, Tim Miller, host of the Bulwark podcast and an MS Now political analyst. So, look, we have some elections. Cook Political Report put out today that they're moving a lot of elections that look like they could go Republican to Democratic, including in a few red states. It looks better for the Democrats than it did just a few weeks ago. Do these anti-abortion groups have the potential to make what seems to be even closer elections, even closer than that?
I think that they probably want to think that they do, but here's the thing. Trump has a lot of leverage to call their bluff, because Marjorie Daniels, I know her. I know these activists. Ted Cruz was the pro-life candidate in 2016. Trump on various times, this isn't the first time we've been through this rodeo, and kind of pro-life ink has come around to Trump every time. And so I think he sees this as an empty threat. Now, there are risks on both sides of this issue in a midterm, right? Like on the one hand, you want to make sure you're turning out your voters. And on the other hand, with swing voters, as you mentioned in these polls, the midterms are looking worse and worse. I think that Republicans are looking at this and Trump's looking at this and being like, where are some things that we can moderate? He's done that before in the past on various issues. Trump's bet is that, I can kind of be a little wiggly on this in the hopes that it helps my political standing and these guys are going to vote for me anyway. It's a risky bet, but also, if past his prologue, my guess is that he'll give them a fig leaf and the pro-life groups will be back on board.
So according to findings from the Public Religion Research Institute, Tim, in 2024, around 1 in 10 residents in most states said abortion should be illegal. 1 in 10. There are only 7 states where fewer than half of the residents support abortion rights. So we're talking about a relatively small number of people. But when it comes to congressional districts in red states, and I'm talking micro here, not macro, understanding your argument, could it make a difference?
Well, I think it could make a difference in some of these particularly red districts. If you get in a wave election, I think back to 2018, right, where where the Democrats end up taking seats in like Oklahoma City and Charleston, places they never had before. And so those are places where you do need to juice your the base turnout. The only caveat to that is, if you look at the Senate map, like where the Democrats need to expand, Alaska can't. Even a place like Kansas, they voted on the pro-choice side of that of the abortion amendment in that state. And so, there are very few districts at this point where I think that these pro-life groups have the juice that they used to have.
So what do you think about the risk-reward of this for Sarah, the anti-abortion movement, the risk-reward for the Trump administration?
Yeah, it didn't make much sense to me that Trump even floated the idea of being flexible on the Hyde Amendment. Look, Trump has never been the strongest anti-abortion advocate. This isn't an issue he particularly cares about. But when you look at public sentiment about the Hyde Amendment, 60% of Americans oppose taxpayer-funded abortions. So this isn't an issue that you would think he needs to use as leverage and that he should be willing to offer up. But I guess it shouldn't be that surprising for Americans that he isn't the strongest anti-abortion advocate, considering he appointed a lifelong abortion supporter as his HHS secretary in the second administration. But I think that I agree with Tim's assessment. These anti-abortion groups, I think that they have a little bit more leverage on Trump here, but I think that he's calling them on their bluff. They tend to always fall in line, given they threatened him over appointing RFK Jr. as HHS secretary, and it didn't ever seem to come to anything when it came to that threat. It seemed to be a little bit of an empty threat on their end. But I think that
well,
Trump
let me make this argument then. Let me make this argument. Trump isn't running, right? And there are primaries that are coming up. And could that have an impact there and where the money goes and who they're going to go door to door for?
It certainly could have an impact on that front. And that's probably where they could have the most influence and power, is by threatening people in primaries and being willing to pull money or funnel money into primary challengers. And so I bet that there are a lot of Republicans who are running for office in 2026 who are shaking in their boots a little bit at Trump suggesting something like being flexible on the Hyde Amendment, because that shouldn't even be, as a conservative, that shouldn't even be something that you're willing to float or compromise on.
You know, the ACLU said this week that the Trump administration had agreed to unfreeze millions in federal funding to Planned Parenthood. The president was asked about that by reporters. Take a listen.
It's being reported that frozen funds were released to Planned Parenthood in December by HHS. I'm wondering why that happened.
I have not heard that. I have not heard that.
You're laughing, Tim.
Well, it's like if the HHS secretary hasn't heard it and the president hasn't heard it, who did it? Somebody has to know about this, you would think. Maybe
somebody has to unfreeze it, right?
Maybe the secret deep state person did it. I don't know.
What do you think happened there, Sarah?
No, I mean, it's just laughable that the two people who you would think would be in charge of that decision or read in on that decision claim to have no knowledge of it. Now, whether that's true or not, maybe Trump was briefed on it. This is a topic that he likes to avoid and does not like to discuss. So maybe this was him skirting around it. But there's also a chance that neither of them had any idea about it, which is also just as concerning.
So, Tim, thinking about the midterms now broadly, even Trump-supporting conservatives are acknowledging the tough situation that Republicans are in, right? Listen to what Ben Shapiro had to say on Gavin Newsom's podcast.
Republicans have no chance in this midterm, right?
I think that they are in for a world of hurt right now in the midterms. I mean, they're the incumbent party. They have a bare majority.
Yeah.
That alone would put them behind the eight ball. There are not a lot of swing districts that are kind of left because of all the redistricting. But the swing districts that are left seem to be trending more blue. President Trump isn't on the ballot, so he doesn't really have coattails among the low propensity electorate. So yeah, I think that Republicans are gonna have a rough ride.
So what did the Democrats do to make that happen?
Well, look, I think the question for the Democrats is more about expanding the map, right?
Yeah.
And I was at an event last night here in town with some of these Democrats who are running in districts that, Republicans won by maybe 13 last time, right? Like, that wouldn't have been a traditional swing district. Like, to Ben's point, because of all the redistricting, we don't have a lot of those coin flip districts like we used to have. But in a wave election year, if Republicans voter turnout is depressed, if Democrats are really excited to turn out, if you have the type of candidate that can appeal across party lines, it has to be a kind of a heterodox type candidate. I think that's possible. And to me, that's where the Democrats should be focused on, kind of looking into that next tier of more stretch districts, like I mentioned earlier, the Oklahoma Cities, the Charlestons. I was talking to a guy last night from North Tampa, right? Like those kinds of places where, maybe
Louisiana?
maybe
a state
I don't know about my home state. That might be a stretch.